Say, Dave, you're muted.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering, I know Brian records these meetings, but where can I find it on YouTube? I haven't been able to find all of the past. In fact, today I looked around, I couldn't find any of the past recordings. What are they listed?
Actually, I'm not sure. That would be a good question for Brian, because I don't know if live streaming means it automatically gets recorded too. I'm not sure they're the same thing.
Well, I know I have seen last couple of meetings on Zoom or on YouTube, but I couldn't go back and find them.
Right. I don't know if live stream gets recorded. I think you can not necessarily. I think they're two separate things. Let me see if I can find something about it.
Well, we'll ask Brian.
No, they're recorded.
Okay.
Not automatically, but the matter of fact, I just started it. So this one's being streamed on YouTube. They're all there. There's a lot of them because there's a whole lot of ones from Diablo on there because it keeps getting cut off. And so I should go in and delete all those because it's getting kind of messy.
Well, the thing, Brian, I was trying to look at some of the past ones today on YouTube, and I'd be darned, I didn't know how to find them. What do you have them listed under?
Under Santa Barbara Amateur Radio Club. They should all be there.
One word or a space between names?
You look up Santa Barbara Amateur Radio Club, just with spaces normally.
With spaces, yeah.
Yeah, and find them. And then we've got, let me look here. We've got, oh, you know what?
What?
Looks like there's only 10 at a time. I wonder if that's kind of interesting. I'm going to have to.
Is that even if you click on videos? Because when I clicked on videos, there's a lot more.
Yeah, I'm on videos. I can only see 10.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at uploads, video uploads, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of 5, 6 lines of 5, and it keeps expanding as I scroll down.
Oh, okay. Wait, if you go to live videos, there's 229 of them.
Wow. And I couldn't even find one.
Yeah, you just search for Santa Barbara Amateur Radio Club, just like you'd write it down.
Well, I'll try it again.
Yeah, because there's a section, a tab for videos and a tab for live. So these are live streams. They're not videos per se. They're live streams that were saved.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, okay, this one started, so I can get out of that. I have to post a link on the website simultaneously because I don't know what it is till the video started.
Right now, live.
Where's Rod?
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you, Jim.
Okay, nobody can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Jim can't hear us.
No video.
Okay, I'm
Do
doing
you
it.
hear?
No, I can't hear, but see, this is working. Output level.
Yeah, but your sound was off the other day. Can you?
Oh, there you go. Testing.
Can you hear us now, Jim?
There we
Yes, I
go.
can. Roger
Okay.
that. Thank you.
Very good.
That's right.
Oh, and there's Ken.
Mute my start video. When is that?
There's Larry.
Hey, Larry,
Wow.
looks like we may get a full audience after all.
My audio.
No, they've asked me.
Okay. Do you hit start video? No.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, on
should,
the bottom left.
Bottom left.
well, for me,
That's for Windows. I don't know what you're
Yeah.
using.
it's up there.
There you go. You got it.
There you go.
Yep.
Roger that. W6KKG, this is your big night.
It's Brian.
There I am.
Roger that.
I was here all along.
I went over, we
I'm the
went
one that
over,
lets everybody in.
we're so up on top of everything. We went over to the school district headquarters. Looking around, there ain't no people here, Meg. So we went out to dinner, came back, still nobody there.
Oh,
But now you're looking at Novita land.
you were looking for the club meeting out at the school?
So,
Brian, you were saying in your note that you, this may be the last Zoom. You're thinking about moving back out to live meetings?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to by now, but these kind of things are a lot easier to do over Zoom than they are in a live meeting, especially if you want people that don't live in the area to be able to watch them. So to be honest, I'm a little bit reluctant because I don't know how big a turnout we'll get at a live meeting.
Well, you can take a vote, and I think I would vote for Zoom. I think, in fact, you took a straw poll. before.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, we can do it. We can do a hybrid where we do both of them. But if you can, here we have 11 people. And, even if all 11 of us showed up at the meeting, that's a lot of work for 11 people. So it's a lot easier and there's Dave's down in close to Camarillo, and usually we'll probably get a couple more from that area. But some people habitually check in about 7:25, 7:35. So we'll give them a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can get our attendance. I get a little bit worried about people are pretty, meetings are easy to go to like this because you just walk in the other room, sit down for a little while, and no big, no hassle. And when you got to get it and get in your car and go somewhere, it might be different.
Brian,
Yeah.
does the attendance depend very much upon the subject matter of the meeting?
Doesn't seem to.
No?
No. Always seems to be about the same.
Well, tonight's not a good night for a meeting since we have the giant CW contest going on right now. Everybody's out there contesting, right? All of us CW operators. I went over to UCSB tonight for about 10 minutes and Dr. Long was over there pounding away at the key and he had already made 200 contacts in an hour and a half on 15 meters.
Wow.
Japan, Finland, Korea, China, Singapore, Taiwan. I mean, it was crazy tonight. The bands were, or at least 15 meters was wide open. So,
talked to somebody in Amarillo, Texas last night on 40 meters.
Phone or CW?
Phone, yeah.
Okay.
But I wasn't using the antennas behind you.
Yeah, I'm sitting out in the front yard right now. It's getting cold though. I'm gonna have to go in shortly.
And you have a great looking antenna farm.
Thanks, Daryl.
And are those all your antennas?
No, that one belongs to my neighbor right there. That's an oil well, actually. He stuck an antenna on top of it.
An oil well with a cellular array up above.
Uh-huh. Actually, my neighbor does have, he's up on a hill. It's an apricot orchard. He's got, what do you have there? 60 acres, I think. There's 160. I think it's 60. And there is a water tank up on the top, which you've probably seen from the 101 just as you passed Winchester. And it was a really cool old looking wooden water tank up on stilts. They just put it up there about 7 years ago. It's a brand new cell tower, no water in it. It just looks like an old wooden tank. It's all got, the rustic look to it. They painted it to make the wood look really old. It looks absolutely authentic, and yet it's just a big tower. One of the best disguises I've ever seen for a cell tower. Beats the pants off of those fake trees.
Right.
Is that fairly a decent source of income for him?
Yeah, it's pretty good actually. Yeah, I can't remember what the total is. He gets at least $1,500 a month for it.
That's good. Buys
Maybe.
groceries.
He actually might get twice that. I can't remember if that's per carrier or for the whole tower.
Wow.
He negotiated a deal with the carriers directly, which was smart, because now American Tower, someone like that comes in and tries to do all the negotiation. So you get like $1,500 and then they charge the same amount for every carrier they put on it. So it's better to go direct, but it's harder to do that these days because the tower companies are smart and they're kind of running the show. The churches, were what they targeted for a long time, putting them in the steeples and stuff like that. So the churches were all making $1,000 to $1,500 a month for a long time. It's good revenue for the church.
Oh, wow.
I'll put up a steeple for that.
You're gonna get religion.
Yeah, I'll even ring the bell.
Yeah.
Don't have to anymore. They all have recordings.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's get started. I don't think we're going to get. Oh, there's one more. Oh, Michael's back. Let's let him get logged in here. There he is. Okay, he's connected. Okay, let's get started. We got, let's see, 12. Maybe we'll get a few more. Be nice to get about twice that much, but we'll see. Thanks everybody for coming to the meeting tonight. We're going to have a good presentation here. I had seen this white Alice before, but I didn't know that much about it. Sure is an ugly looking thing, but we're gonna.
I beg your pardon.
We're gonna hear all about it. Let's see, before we get started, it's our tradition here to say the Pledge of Allegiance and introduce ourselves. So we'll start off with the pledge. There we go.
Oh,
Is the flag on the right side
flag.
or the left side?
Flip.
So flip it around.
It's swapped, but if the wind's blowing from your right, then it's fine.
Flip it around.
Oh, from your left, it's fine.
From my left. Oh, wait a minute.
Flip it around.
I can't see the same thing you guys see. Is that better?
Nope, didn't change.
It didn't change.
Reverse it. Left to right, right to left.
I am.
Nothing's happening.
Okay. Bug.
We'll just say the pledge backwards.
Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all. Okay, back to the other thing here. Okay. Well, let's introduce ourselves. Let's start up here with on my corner anyway, Rod.
Yeah, Rod, KA6GSU, inhabitant of North Oxnard and long-term club member.
All right, Dave.
AI6BX, living in East End Ventura, closer to the Camarillo side.
Ron, who's also our speaker.
Yeah, W6KKG, living out here at 154 at Rancho Santa Barbara Mobile Home Park, right across from Dorothy and Doc.
Oh, he's close.
Yeah, where's Doc? Let's see, Dorothy.
Where is she?
She's there.
You're
She's
muted.
muted. You're still muted. There you go.
Okay, it's Dorothy at K6DSO. I'm the club secretary.
Jim. JFE, Jim.
JFE.
W6KKG, good evening all. Looking forward to a nice presentation. Good choice.
Okay, Daryl.
Good evening, everybody. You said referring to me?
Yes.
Okay.
No, the other Daryl.
No, two Daryls? Oh, you mean my brother, Daryl?
Yeah.
I'm Daryl, KF6DI, past president of this club, 1995, 1996. Believe it or not, during those 2 years, we got our club membership up to 503 people. Let's do it again.
Jim.
AE6EG. Behind me behind the thumb is AE6EF, Meg. We're in Lolita, Cambridge, and Fair Oaks. Cathedral Oaks. And you see this puppy here? This is the one that the gentleman went to Peru. He came back, a lot of confusion. Well, I finally located it. It was the wrong Jim. But there it is. I got two of them.
Nice. It was the other Jim.
Yes, sir.
Ken.
KA6KEN here in Winchester Canyon on the antenna farm. Looks like the store deal may be closing on Wednesday, so we have a place to put stuff. Yeah, we signed all the paperwork yesterday.
Good.
Very excited. Are you guys bringing stuff by this weekend, by the way, Brian?
No.
Okay.
Hey,
Looks
Ken,
like-
are you're gonna usher out all those homeless folks that are sleeping in your front yard there of the front door?
It's just one guy. He actually confronted me yesterday by name. A little shocking. Yeah, people have been coming by here trying to figure out when you're going to open up. Yeah, I can tell. I can let them know. Like,
Well,
I'm a spokesman now.
every time
Why don't
I
you give him
drive
some
by, he's
cards?
sitting out there.
It's your first employee.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Kind of Dorman.
You better check your insurance. Michael.
Good evening, everybody. It's Michael coming to you from the obvious Shadowlands out here in Goleta. I've actually read the book before I'm seeing the presentation. Ron was good enough to lend me, what is it, Ron? 1 of 2 copies. And it reads really well. So I'm looking forward to the presentation.
There's words in it?
Yeah, they're all strung together.
Are there words in it?
Wayne.
Yeah, AF6TX, site trustee, and I remember looking at those tropo scatter antennas when I used to work in the Arctic back in the late 70s, early 80s. I first thought they were actual the Duline radar, but I later learned what they were actually used for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll show you some more tonight.
Let's see, Larry. Larry?
No, Mike,
Hello, Larry.
he's muted.
Larry's muted.
I'm not sure that's even really Larry, to tell you the truth. He might have left the room for a minute. He'll come back. And I'm Brian, K6BPM.
Mhm.
Let's see. I wanted to make one announcement here. The I've made some changes to the membership, or excuse me, to the on the website. When you log in, it wasn't very good before. It was a sort of a built-in thing, and it's all been redone and changed. And what I'd like to do is if you go to the website, you'll notice it's a little different where you log in. If you logged in and your username is not your call sign, go ahead and re-register and use your call sign for your username, because I'm going to delete all the ones that don't have call signs as their username. Call signs are absolutely unique and better than email addresses because they're a lot easier to spell. And it's that way we know we can link the member to club members. And it's the beginning of, it's the first step necessary in order to try and join our membership list with our, with whether or not you paid your dues. So you'll be able to go look this up online, and it will ask you some questions. You can fill that out. Some things, for example, your email address and your phone number won't be shown to the public. And if you really want to be anonymous, you can click a box to protect your privacy so that only the people running the website will be able to see who it is. When we get enough people on there, what I'll do is I'll put a button on there, and it'll have a membership roster, and it will be displayed to the members, and but it'll be more like a Hollywood Squares type thing. And you'll see, you can upload your own picture and a background, and say a little bit about yourself, and there'll be a function there so members can communicate. If you don't have a person's email address, you can go to the website, find them on the membership roster, click on it, and send them a message. So it'll work like it's more like a social networking type thing. So anyway, so the upshot is if you sign in normally and don't use your call sign, just go ahead and forget about it, re-register, and everything will be fine. In about a month or so, I'm just going to delete all the ones with that don't have call signs as usernames. And then we'll just start all over and get good data on everybody. And I think we can make it a little bit more seamless. A lot of people are asking all the time, when does my membership expire? And, gee, is there a member roster so I can get a hold of somebody, or, and to protect users' privacy, we haven't been doing that because the membership roster has been generated manually using a spreadsheet, and to go through every month and try and pick out the ones that don't want their name to appear, or their email address, or their phone number, and do everything to everybody's wishes, it makes it impossible. So this way you'll be able to select your own privacy levels, and you can be on the roster, the public roster, or not. Anyway, so yeah.
What did you end up installing a membership package behind
No, unfortunately, there's no good membership package for the way we do things. But what I did is I installed another package that's halfway there, partway there. And it allows me to create custom database fields and add those to the, to the registration method. And from those, then we'll be able to link that to another table that will have membership, your annual due date or dues date, and how long you've been a member, your license class, all the other little things that we ask on the form. So it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a couple, maybe more like 5-6 months to get it all working, but this will be the first step. And as we get that populated and I have some records to work with, then I'll work on on bringing in the results of when you go online to pay your dues, it'll automatically, update it. So you'll be able to go back tomorrow and look, and your record will say, oh yeah, you're all paid up. Problem is that, we send out these letters every month that have your membership, your due date when your dues are supposed to be paid. But by the time we get them into the mailing list program, sometimes they're 2 months old. So if you paid your dues this month, we send out a notice next month. We say that your membership's expired. It really isn't. It's just that we don't have the information from point A to point B to point C to get it out there. So this will hopefully eliminate all that.
Great.
Hopefully. Anyway, before we get started, any club business, anybody have anything they want to bring up or any questions?
How's the 14679 doing on the Mesa? Is it still having issues, or did it fix itself?
Wayne? Sounded okay.
He's muted.
You're muted, Wayne.
There had been some interference on the link from UCSB, but we haven't seen it lately, so we haven't been able to try running it down.
So Wayne, is it only if someone's using the UCSB receiver, or is it that receiver is injecting stuff on the main node no matter what, so that you're hearing it no matter who's transmitting?
I think it would be no matter who's transmitting.
Okay.
Because the link's running all the time.
So the interference is actually coming into La Vigia through the 440 link.
Right.
Okay. Got it.
Now it's possible and it doesn't occur all the time because it's still looking for a PL tone, that gets transmitted through that. So the interference wouldn't cause, 14679 to key up. So something still has to get it to key up, but then that junk will be there.
Oh, I see. Got it.
Yeah, when we tested it the other day, if we went to another repeater, we didn't hear it. But if something keyed up either the Mesa or the UCSB link, we'd hear that. So it was, we tried all the different repeaters, and both at the island and up on San Ynez Peak, and you could communicate between those just fine. There was no static, but it didn't last that long. It just happened to be that day.
Yeah, and I've seen it when I've been up there, kind of seeing the voter go crazy with junk from there, but and I'm not sure why the voter doesn't just clean it out, but maybe occasionally it's stronger signal than the correct one.
It's interesting that it's actually got it doesn't have PL on it. You're just saying something. Okay, got it. Never mind. Scratch.
Is that
Okay.
what was that what was affecting Daryl last night on the club net?
I don't know.
His signal was, he had solid RF, but the audio was fluttering in and out very rhythmically. And then when he switched repeaters, it was fine.
I thought he changed radios.
I think he changed repeaters.
KF60, I on the trivia net,
Yeah, right. Did you change radios?
I have two radios, and one's on the island, and the one is TZ, 2 meters. And
Okay.
typically, the 2 meter is about impossible for me to hit from in here. And I've been using the island for quite a while. It was always crystal clear until last night. I don't know what happened. And then the Lavigia Hill came in beautifully. So I don't know. I can't explain it.
Okay.
Do you use 220 or 2 meters on the island?
220.
Okay.
All right. Well, are you ready, Ron?
Ready as I can be. Now the doc has showed up.
Okay. Yeah, we've been holding this for you, Doc. You missed the Pledge of Allegiance. You're going to have to stay after.
That'll do.
Okay, let's see here. Now, I'm going to drive the presentation here, and Ron's going to narrate, and he's going to tell me when to advance to the next frame. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I'll turn it over to you, Ron. Okay, as soon as you see it come up there, you'll be.
Brian, can you mute everybody so we don't get background?
There it is. This is
Sorry. What was that?
Can you mute everybody so we don't get background?
Camera also.
Yeah, well, that's Larry, I think. Okay. Let's see, I won't mute.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Brian?
Yeah, you're sharing the screen fine. We're seeing the antenna.
Brian, you're muted.
Okay, good.
Brian, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So thank you all for indulging me this evening. Last month, Brian was crying the story that we didn't have anybody present, so he twisted my arm. And so here I am. Let me give you this little preamble. Back when this COVID started, my wife said, "You're bored to tears. Why don't you write a book?" I said, "What for?" She said, "Well, for your grandkids anyway." So what I did is I sat down and wrote this book. A couple of you have seen it. So I'm going to be talking from that book. And so what you're seeing right now on the front cover is one of the 60-foot antennas that Wayne said he had seen when he was in Alaska. So slide. Brian, slide. Okay. I got out of the Air Force when I was all of 22 years old and wet behind the ears. And I went to work for helicopters, which many of us know about. And I enjoyed that. But one day I saw an ad in a local magazine, which you're looking at right now, said White Owl is something new, Western Electric System. And I really thought that ought to be fun, but I wondered what the heck it was all about. So I got a hold of the office and gave my background, Air Force, 4 years electronics, and so forth and so on. They hired me pretty quick after that. Slide. This is a overall depiction of the White Owl system, tropospheric scatter system. And my first duty station, which I'll talk about in a while, is down here at Middleton Island, the lower right-hand corner. It said Middleton Island. We're about 60 miles out to sea into Homer, Alaska, and then up to Wasilla. So that's the first place I was at. I'll talk about it in a moment. Later on, I went up to a place called Granite Mountain, and I don't know if you can see my pointer, but it's just to the right of the word Nome. There's a three-way hop there. Okay, slide. Well, the first thing that happened is I went into Anchorage, Alaska for a 3-month electronics school. We learned all about inside plant and all about tropo and all that sort of thing. We had a great time. And after 3 months, we were graduating, and the graduation consisted of everybody having a party and drinking something called Peter Potter's Potent Punch, which turned out to be about, 85% pure alcohol. But there wasn't too many sober people when they crawled on the plane the next day to go out to the site. So I stayed away from it somewhat. I see Jim over there, Jim Smart's laughing, so you must know about Peter Potter's Potent Punch. But anyway, I flew out to a place called Middleton Island, but I was surprised to hear we didn't have any big troposcatter. We had an AC&W site, which you're looking at. There's 3 radar sites. The island was 1 mile wide and about 4 miles long. But, and there was a small tropo site, but we didn't have much to think about it. Slide. Here's another view of the equipment building, not ours, but this was where all the surface search and TPQ, that's the surface search radar, were located. Slide. Here I am working the patch panel. I look a little different now. I guess I was 22 years old in those days, but that was the size of the patch panel. That's all we had. And we had one little microwave link and one little 1 kW tropo to speak of. So that's what the station looked like. Wasn't very much of a start. I was kind of disappointed. Go on, slide. This was the sub in total of all of our test equipment. The only thing you probably recognize still is an old Tektronix scope, and equipment in those days was a heck of a lot bigger than it is today, that's for sure. Could probably put everything we're using today in modern transistor into one of those machines. So slide. That was Wien, Alaska Airlines. That's when I was starting to grow a beard and thought I was really hot stuff in those days. And that was a supply plane that came in once a week. Well, it so happened that on this particular flight, a new technician showed up. He got off and looked around the places. Is this it? Yeah, a mile wide and 3 miles long. He said, no, thank you. And he quit on the spot without even going to work. He just went to school and then he went and quit on us. So that was the end of that. Well, it's about that time. I'd been there a couple of months and they decided to need a new technician up to Granite Mountain. Slide. Well, this is how we got into Granite Mountain. That's Dick Gallagher and his little 4-place airplane. We would fly commercial into Nome, and then Dick would pick us up from Nome, Alaska, and fly us out to Granite Mountain. Now, you can't tell it here, but this runway is a one-way only. Didn't have any one-way signs in those days, but on one end was a mountain, and the other end was a valley, dropped straight off. So you only could land and take off, or you landed one way and took off the other, or you didn't do it at all. Slide. That's the other end of the runway. And the building on the left, the little green building, that was the entire control tower station and what have you for Granite Mountain. Consisted of a radio of some sort, airband radio, and a weather station. The other were just, I guess, utility, but you can see about 2 miles up on top of the hill were the antennas. So that was my first view of the big tropo antennas. The site was all of 21 men. Slide. So we started driving up the road, and as we got closer, I began to see the size of things. There were 4 60-footers and a couple of 30s. Slide. Another view as we got closer, began to see what the size of the site were. On the far left are two 250,000-gallon water tanks, because we're totally remote, about 150 miles from Nome and about 2 miles or so inside of the Arctic Circle. This picture was taken obviously in the summertime. Slide. And here we are arriving at the actual site. I'll show you more about those barrels and what they're for later. But the interesting thing is seeing this green building in the middle here. We used to call that the Mule Barn. And when extra staff was there, and we didn't have enough quarters there in the main white colored building, we put them up there. And I have to tell you, there was one time, one night when the wind was blowing maybe 80, 90 miles an hour, and the side of the building was coming in. So they took and used the old Army military cots, the steel cots, and nailed them up against the wall And they brought up a D8 Caterpillar and put it right about where the door is on the side here, threw cables all the top to keep the building from blowing away. I have more to say about that later. Slide. And here's the closer look. With tropo scatter, you'll see there are two 60-foot antennas, 60 high, 60 across, parabolics. And there's two in each direction because we're running quad diversity. It's both space diversity as well as vertical and polarity diversity. So this is why we have to have 4 of these. I'll get a better picture in a minute. Slide. That's a better view of it. This is show the picture on the right is the feed horn here and the feed horn. And I think we were running about 900 megahertz at that time, but it would spray the energy into the parabolic and then of course would shoot it out about, in most cases, about 150 to 200 miles. And we'll talk more about how tropo works, but that was what we had on site. Slide. All right, so let's get into the meat and bones of this thing. This is what we had 4 of these. These are 10 kW klystron amplifiers. On the left-hand side where it says beam power supply, they were running 18,000 volts on that thing. And that's what the beam supplied over to the klystron amp, which was on the far right-hand side. In between was primary control, bombarder, and filament supply. And many of you may not know what a bombarder is, but because of the potential here, the filament supply could not boil off enough electrons fast enough. So they had a 2,000 volt bombarder that bombarded the cathode. And so you'd have to bring that up slowly till you get up about 2K. And then you'd start bringing up from the beam power supply, you'd bring up to 18,000 volts onto the klystron. Again, about 900 megahertz. You can see 4 tuning coils. You had to be very careful as you tuned it up. If you ran it through resolution on the penultimate, you could possibly burn up the whole damn thing. So we had to be very careful, tuning it up slowly, and then the penultimate would be the last cavity we would slowly tune up. And this was a lot of fun to tune up, I can tell you, and even more fun when we opened them up. This one shows it with the doors open, but there's normally big cabinet doors all around it. And this was a thrill of a lifetime to learn how to operate something that put out 10 kW. Slide. Oop, okay. As you can see, there's quite a bit bigger control room than the one I had at Middleton Island. You can see there's in the foreground are the weather teletypes, because we took the weather 4 times a day and run a perf tape and then run a reperf on and sent the teletype weather back to the United States proper. The rest of this is all control board. The system is basically a Western Electric system, a T3 command. We could run up to 600 channels of voice if we needed to. And this is just about, I'd say 20% of the size of the size of the room. What you see here in the purple blue lights are the rectifiers that brings part of the DC voltage over to the 10 kW machines. Slide.
We're muted, so it's not, it's not going to hear anything I say.
Yeah, there's a better view of those.
If we,
at this point, believe it or not, it's been 60 years since I've been on that place, since I'm now 85 years old. So my memory's a little bit off. These can't be the rectifiers for the main, maybe it's for some of the other equipment, but it was fun to look at. Slide. Back one. Another view of, we call the 18B board. That was Western Electric name. This device here, the lights on it, they would scan across back and forth, checking the each channel to make sure it was operational. Patch panels galore, test equipment galore, and most of the time we had 2 people on shift on the site. They say there were only 21 men on site. But only about 8 or 9 of us were electronic. The rest were all guys who worked on the outside plant, driving Caterpillar tractors, filling the water tanks. And then during the summertime, we would get a supply plane about every hour would land and bringing in food supplies and the stuff we're not supposed to have, like booze and so forth. But anyway, then many a night I had to work this panel all by myself. Maybe 2 nights a week I was by myself. I worked the midnight to 6 in the morning shift. So there was one night, slide. There I am working the board again, nothing special there. There was one night, I have to tell you, the equipment room, it gets pretty warm. And from midnight to 9 in the morning, yeah, it gets pretty tired. And I was the only one on duty, well, except for the cook. We have a bull cook. And he would cook the midnight breakfast, the morning breakfast, and bake cakes and pies and bread all night. And of course, that you can see already I'm gaining weight there. But one night I was sitting there kind of half asleep, and the wind was really howling outside and so forth. But all of a sudden, the major station alarms went off. Bong, bong, bong. Well, that alarm goes off in the equipment room, but it also goes off in the sleeping quarters. So before I could even rouse myself from my kind of half awake, half asleep position, the room was filled with the site supervisor and 3 other techs. And what had happened is that the wind had slowed down and the temperature had come up. Well, see, those big 10 kW Klystrons have to be water and ethylene glycol cooled, and the heat exchangers have to have plenty of air. Well, it got hot outside, the wind stopped, and so the Klystron was getting too hot and they shut down. So I had to go into the equipment room and bring up the transmitters again after we opened up the louvers and cooled it off. So we were off maybe 20, 25 minutes, which is a no-no, but thankfully the exciters will feed through and we never really lost signal to anybody, just that it was degraded signal. So that was a night to remember. And also one night I was out taking the weather I was telling you about, and I started to turn around and come back in the room. It's about 2 or 3 in the morning. And what do you know? There was a Wolverine right between me and the equipment room door. Of course, no one believed it, but I saw it. And I said, oh boy, Wolverine, they'll take on a bear without a question. But the darn thing turned around and ambled off, and I got inside and closed the door. Well, the guys inside wouldn't believe me, but anyway, that's what happened. And I came face to face with the Wolverine. Slide. Here's what kept us going. We're 150 miles from the nearest real civilization. Powerhouse with 4 350 kW generators, 2 online at all time. One was for the equipment bus because it needed to be stabilized and controlled. And the other one was for the utility bus for all the kitchen lighting and equipment and pumps and what have you. And the other 2, one of them was on standby in case one of the operating ones went off, you would have it switch over. And then the 4th one was always in maintenance and repair. And there were always, one of those had to be running. So you can notice the one in the center, there's a power switch is up right there. That shows that that one was powered up. So slide.
How many volts were those?
That was all 220.
Okay.
Back up one, Daryl, back a slide. Okay, there's a closer view of those things. They are big. I mean, and of course, when you went inside, you had to have earmuffs on. And if they ever went down, you had no other way to start one. We had a small kick engine that charged up air. And these things were started with high pressure air. And of course, when they took off, it would practically deafen you. But we actually had 2 powerhouse mechanics on duty 24/7 to help support us. Slide. To give you an idea of the side of them, the guy on the left is one of the diesel mechanics, and we had the inspection plates turned off so they could keep that engine in repair. And we're just looking through the inspection plates. And that's pretty, gives you an idea how big those engines are. Slide. The fun part during the summer, the guys are out with the D8 Caterpillar and of course the big tank with water on it. You could see he's going down to the airport down below. Slide. This was a fun one. The site had only been built a couple of years before and there was some equipment left on site they hadn't picked up yet. So the Air Force sent out a C-124 to pick it up. And I was just amazed. I went down to the airport and the pilot took a couple, 3 loops over our so-called airport as close as he could, wheels up, to get an idea. Slide. Then he came at the very beginning of the runway. And I say the beginning because behind that aircraft, it drops right into a valley. So he just hit the ground, reversed the engines, everything shook like crazy, and he came up to the runway as far as he could without hitting the hill. Slide. When he stopped, you can see one of the aircraft mechanics up on the wing. Gives you an idea of the side of a 124. And then in the center, the clamshell opens up and those big ramps drop down, and they actually put an enormous rock crusher in the side of that thing, closed it up and went up to the top of the runway. Slide. Well, here he is revving the engines up, and he revved them up, and the whole aircraft was just shaking like crazy. And he released the brakes, and down the runway it went. And as he came off the end, he kind of floated down into the valley, and we all held our breath. But luckily, it came up a little bit higher, and he was gone. But that again was a thrill to see that size of aircraft on a little crushed granite rock airport. Slide. Well, not everything was work. There was a gold mine at the bottom there, and they used what's called, some of you may be familiar with, it called a giant. The pipe we're sitting on is water, and they would get it down into a big nozzle, and they would play it back and forth against the side of the hill, washing the gravel away and the gold, and they run it through an old-fashioned sluice box. Well, the site consisted of the owner, one guy and his wife, and these 2 kids. And we used to bring our extra food down we had more food than we could eat. And these wonderful little kids did not know what an apple or an orange was. And we had to show them how to peel an orange. Otherwise, they didn't know how to eat them. Slide. Here's my favorite little girl. She probably 3 years old. And I can't remember now. Again, it's 60 years ago. I don't know if she spoke English or one of the dialects of Eskimo or not, but she was a sweetie. Slide. Well, you can see the site in the back, but here's one of the technicians. We had in the summer fishing like you cannot believe. If you're a fisherman, you can imagine you could almost reach in and grab the fish. So here's one of the guys we came down to do some fishing, and I'll show you the next slide what the result was. Well, there you are, one afternoon's catch. The guy on the left was a head chef in Club 21 in New York, very famous restaurant. But I guess he decided either he wanted the adventure or the money because they paid us exceptionally well. So he came up to the site and he was the main cook. He would only cook noon and an evening meal. That's all he had to do. The guy in the center was one of our techs. And interesting, the guy on the right was a retired, or at least just gotten out of the Air Force. He was a fighter jet pilot and been in the Air Force, I guess, 5 or 6 years, but he came up and worked on a site, and he was a cat skinner. He would drive those big Caterpillar tractors to have fun. But here you can see one afternoon's catch of fish, and we had more fish to eat than you can imagine. There's only, say, 21 men on the site. We sure ate well. Slide. Well, eventually it does get cold, and these are what they call snow-goes, and you drive them like a tractor. And I did take one out one afternoon and promptly got a little bit of frostbite on my left leg because I forgot and left my left knee up against the side of the thing, and it promptly started to freeze. But that was our transportation if we had to during the winter. Slide. Another view of the wonderful weather. If you'll notice over on the left side, some Quonset huts. We had 6 of those when I got there. But we did have a terrible, terrible storm one night and everything was blowing. I think it was the same night when we almost lost a mule barn. And next morning when we got up, the weather had calmed down, but instead of having 6, we only had 3 of the Quonset left. Never could find the contents or the remnants of the Quonset. We had 3 left and that was it. Everything was gone over the side of the hill.
Wow.
Slide. Here's a couple of guys coming up on the snow goes in a vehicle. If you notice along the road, the stanchions standing up, those were to mark the edge of the road. For those who have not lived in deep snow country, that's the only way you can tell where the road is at. And so remember the old phrase, keep it between the trees. That's what we were doing here. You had to make sure you kept it right on the road. Otherwise you could crash and go over the side. Slide. Another frosty morning. You can see that on the antennas, they're all enclosed on these. That's because they had big kerosene heaters keeping the frost and the heat of the ice off the front of the parabolic. And even the feed horn is pretty well iced up. Slide. There's, we had 2 30-foot antennas. You can see they have heaters coming out the back and the big fuel storage tank down below. But again, these were necessary to keep the ice off the face of the dish. And this was the 1 kW troposcatter going up north of Kotzebue. Slide. Well, it was time for me to leave. I spent just about a year up on site. This is one of my last photographs. I spent a lot of time up there taking photographs. Again, I worked from midnight to 8 in the morning, 8 or 9 in the morning. Most of the roughneck guys and so forth sat around and played cards every night, and it would not be unheard of to see $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 pots going back and forth across each other. I never touched the cards or the booze, and although there wasn't supposed to be any, at least one guy, I don't know how he did it, but he drank a 1/5 of Old Grandad every day. He'd get up in the morning at about 5:30 or 6 and go down to the kitchen, open the bottle, pour it into his coffee cup, and he'd sit, and would you believe this? He would read the dictionary until breakfast was over. Then he'd suit up with a big bunny suit and go out and tackle one of those big tractors, come in at lunchtime or before and have a little more. And then after dinner at night, while he's playing cards, he'd finish off the bottle. Hard living, hard life, but he seemed to be in better shape than I was anyway. Slide. Okay, I left the site after 1 year, and I actually went to Vandenberg Air Force Base here in California for a while. And just before I got to Yermed Tropo, I worked at Vandenberg for Lockheed Missile Company, and I had 3 really close calls. One, I was up at a 150-foot tower servicing the cables, the RF cables, and I had a lot of grease on my hands. And in those days, we did not require any sort of safety harness or a second person. And as I started down the ladder, my hand slipped. Well, I slipped maybe a foot or 2, and luckily I fell in love with that tower. Scared the crap out of me. I somehow got my hands cleaned a little bit better. I just dropped my tool belt all the way to the ground, and they came down the ladder step by step by step. And that was the 75-1 launch area. And there was no one else out there except me at that time. So that was really scary. I just took the rest of the day off and went home. Well, a week or so later, I was working a launch, and in those days, you'd work your 8-hour shift, but if there was a nighttime launch, as there often was, we'd come back to work about 11:30 at night. So we worked all night long, and about 6:37 in the morning, we call it the roach coach would show up with breakfast, and we'd all eat and so forth, and then go back into the blockhouse. We were maybe 300 feet, maybe 100 yards from the launch tower, but we were underground in the blockhouse. Well, they lit off the missile. It got maybe 6 or 8 feet in the air, and everything went to hell. What happened is the quick disconnects on the side of the missile blew out, and that sent a command to the computers to say that the main engine had not started. Well, we were already up in the air, maybe 15 feet by then. So the whole missile came back down and obviously blew up, leveled the pad, and it was an Atlas Agena B. The Atlas was powered by liquid oxygen and kerosene. They used to call it RP1. There's nothing but kerosene. But on top of that was a classified payload powered by unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine as a fuel, and red fuming nitric acid was the oxidizer. Well, that came down, everything blew up. We were in the blockhouse, the lights went out, the place was shaking, the warning bells were going on like crazy. No communication, but luckily somebody had run an old military W8 crank telephone out to the fallback area, so we could have a little communication by chance. And the guys out in the fallback area were concerned. They said all they could see was flame and fire. Well, after about 20 minutes, the techs went out. These were the guys that wore the big plastic bunny suits and aspirators and oxygen. They went out to cut off the lines to the toxic fuel. And by 11 o'clock, 3 or 4 hours later, in came a couple of school buses from the main Vandenberg base, picked us up and took us back to the main base. Well, that was 2 close accidents that kind of got me nervous. And wouldn't you know, a week later, I was driving home from work. The guy in front of me stopped a little bit short. I hit him. Not much, just a little accident. But it was about that time I decided that I'd had too many close calls. And about that time, my employer, ITT Federal Electric, from the Arctic Circle, called and said, we're putting in a new system in Europe called the Euromed Tropo system and Big Rally 2. Would you like to join us? I couldn't wait to get out of Lockheed and hop an airplane and head back to Europe. Slide. First stop was Site IC, Catanzaro, Italy. Slide. Well, what we had done before I got there is that all of us technicians wound up in New York, upper state New York, helping the REL company, Radio Engineering Lab, build the tropo equipment into vans. And these were all 1 kW Klystrons, very similar to what I'd worked before, but only 1 kW. The Klystron was in the section off to the right. The left were all the controls. And of course, you can see an old frequency counter sitting there. But each van had 2 1 kW transmitters, and the vans were shaped into a T formation. On the T was where the receivers were at. Slide. This is the other van. You can see on the far left 2 exciter modulators, then 4 receivers, and way up on top was a test equipment bay and a little office. Again, this tropo we run it's both space and space diversity as well as the polarity. And you combine these 4 signals together into a combiner using, well, I forgot what it is right now, but I'll think of it. At that time, it was brand new type of modulation control. Slide. Same view. As I went up to the office area and looked back and see the 4 receivers, the exciters and the modulators, and there were 10-watt transmitters at the end that fed to the 10 kW. And off to through the hole on the far left is where we went into where the 2 transmitters are at. Slide. These were the actual transmitters, the ones on the left. They would pump 10 watts of RF out of that into the 1 kW transmitters we saw before. Slide. We powered those with these temporary 150 kW each engines. That was something new because we didn't have extra powerhouse people. So as the techs, we had to learn how to bring the engines up and phase one down, bring the other one up, and had to be careful because you could blow everything up if you didn't know what tech you were doing. Go ahead. That's not me. I was not about to do that, but here's a guy putting the feed horn onto the dish. Now you can see the feed horns are much larger here, and these were 400 megacycle half of what the ones in Alaska had been, and open mesh dishes. They're 30 foot, and they were putting on those feed horn heaters. Slide. Here I am sitting in the office end. The control panels overhead gave status of all the equipment in there. I was filling out reports and so forth. Slide, I think. I got to back up one. While I was here at this site, this was in, as I said, Catanzaro, we had come down there and we had some interesting things happen. As we rolled in town, the Air Force was bringing the equipment vans in, and they had U.S. Army and Air Force 6x6 tractor trailers, all the antennas and the 30-foot spars and all that. They rolled into the center of town, little town in Nicastro, and the local police, gendarme, said, you can't park them here and so forth and so on. But with the tractor trailers were the Italian state police called Carabinieri. They just walked up to the local policeman. They argued for a minute, and Carabinieri just up and slugged out the local policeman. And he hit the ground. Everybody backed off, and we parked the trucks wherever they wanted. Of course, we had military guards guarding equipment because, frankly, in those days it was all still fairly classified. In fact, one of the things that had happened when we got into Rome originally, we were sitting around having lunch downtown chatting about the project, and we got back to the office, and apparently the CIA had been sitting next to us listening to everything we had to say, and they raised hell with us because we were on a classified project. No fun at all. In addition to that, one day a local fellow drove up with a very fancy Porsche, come over, spoke well English, well dressed, and said, could you come over and help me with my radio? Yeah, come pick me up tomorrow. So he did. We drove up to the little town in Nicastro, pulled up in front of this big building. He pushed a button and the gates opened up, and inside was a half a dozen high-end cars, Porsche, Lamborghinis, what have you. A servant met us at the door. We came in. His radio, only problem he had, it needed new batteries, but he had antiques all over the house, some Ming Dynasty vases, if you will. But I met his mother, the Baroness, and she invited me for lunch. We sat down. There was two servants standing behind a table. I was quite nervous because I had never been in the company of royalty before, and turns out she's the Baroness, he's a Baron, and owns all kinds of land in southern Italy. So that was an interesting one. But also on the way up to the site one night, at about 11 o'clock at night, we were stopped by the state police, the Carabinieri, and they just wanted to speak English. And that was fine. We were glad to talk to them, but they had automatic rifles and they never lowered them down for a half hour. We finally convinced them we had to go to work, and so they let us go. And of course, when we got to work, we changed the shifts. The guys got really perturbed because we were at least a half hour late. Slide. One other little story back at that Italian place. The hotel we stayed at was a place called Hotel Poggi, and it was he was the owner. And one night, we were sitting having dinner at the owner's table, as we did every night. And one night he walks around the table with a pistol, clicking it as he walks around the table. Now he's probably 75, 80 years old, and his wife Anna was much, much younger. And so he walks around, didn't say a word that night, just kept clicking his pistol. Next morning, our good Spanish technician by the name of Ibanez, he disappeared. He just up and left all of a sudden, and we didn't have to wonder why. Well, from there, I went back, it's not on the slide, but I went to Greece for a short time. And then all the supervisors and all the managers were sent to a site up near Naples for a couple of months till we got ready for the next place. And so I spent a little time there. And while I was there, I don't know why the slides are out of sort, but anyway, I went up to the first site I had been at in Camp Darby as the site supervisor. It was my first supervisory position. I got a nice double promotion. and stayed up there. And that was pretty interesting because what had happened, we got there and there was a retired Air Force or Army Lieutenant Colonel was the site manager, but he did not know anything about tropo. He knew nothing about radios. He didn't know anything about construction. So he spent his days over at the Army Officers Club right there at Camp Darby. He ran up a big bill, and one weekend he took the company credit card and flew back home to Alaska or someplace. Promptly got fired on the spot, which was my break because they shipped me out of Greece straight down to that site, and I became the site manager of site at there. And I spent about 9 months there building that site out and getting it together because once again, most of the fellows had no experience. So from there, I was shipped off to Western Turkey to a site called IT, Izmir, Turkey. Slide. This is the overall view of the site. It was a big site. We had two 60-foot antennas, slide, and a couple of 1 kW antennas. You can see in the lower right, one of the 30-foot antennas, and up in the center with the microwave tower and equipment building was right there too. It was a good sized site, but once again, the site manager, Air Force Master Sergeant, who just retired, a heck of a nice guy. Really enjoyed working with him, but he knew nothing about construction and nothing about tropo. So I was there about a month and he ups and quits. And I guess I could have been the site manager, but I had a wife with me at that time and she was very pregnant. We did not want to have the baby born in Turkey. So I requested and received a chance to go back to Greece. So they sent me back to Greece. And I went, from there, well, slide. Here's just a couple of the 60-foot antenna. If you notice the difference is that there's no backing, there's no heating on it because the weather was not that bad in Izmir, Turkey. And these were not our antennas. These were actually part of NATO. NATO had been building a tropo system, but they never could get it up and operating. So we showed up, built ours out, and had communication going in a few months, and they were still trying to get things going. Slide. From there, I went to Central and Eastern Turkey, site TM and Adana. Slide. These are what's the remnants of an old Air Force tropo scatter system, 30-foot antennas. We're on a 11,000-foot mountain. That was one of the better days. I went out there, but mostly because I told them that I needed a promotion if they wanted me to go out to Eastern Turkey. And other than that, they were going to send me to some other small sites. I said, no, if you promote me to supervisor engineer, I will go out to Eastern Turkey. Well, I got out there and only soon enough to find that the equipment was not installed correctly. We were short of staff. Again, not many techs had any idea about fixing a RG8 or RG9 cables or any such thing. So I called for friends, and 3 of my buddies that had been with me for years came out. A couple of them stayed a couple months, but one guy, Al Kaleja, he stayed through, but he worked the night shifts and he had to redo all the patch panel cables because people didn't know how to put the grounding braid in correctly, so there was nothing grounded. And there was shortness of beds, so a lot of guys were sleeping on old Army cots in between the equipment racks. No fun. Slide. This is just the front of one of the antennas still up at the mountain. This place called the Diyarbakir out in Eastern Turkey. Slide. This was a site that I can't talk too much about it. I guess I'd have to kill you to tell you, but it was one of the big sites out toward the Russian border. You can see it had a microwave shot and so forth. I can tell you this, this microwave site went down to a Turkish air base, but it was not a straight shot. So we sent the signal up to the reflector, sent it off to another microwave tower, and from there they reflected down, put it through an amplifier, sent it back up, and then reflected down to the site. Well, we couldn't get a signal going. So the guys from headquarters came out and they put a bunch of mirrors on the passive reflector and came out at night, and they used a theodolite, essentially a laser, to line it up to make sure you get the signal reflecting off the mirrors, and then we can get the radio signal to follow. So that worked out pretty good. Slide. This is the site at Adana, Turkey. The 60 footers are ours. The two big towers are part of the old ionospheric system, which is not anywhere near as reliable as Tropo, even though it would go a lot farther signal-wise. But when I got out to this site, it turns out that they couldn't get the amplifiers to work. It turned out that the waveguide had been improperly installed. There were no seals between each section of the waveguide. So we tore apart the waveguide, put in new seals, fired it up. We got 1011 kW out of it with no problem at all. At this point, I realized I wasn't just out as the site supervisor, but I turned out to be the supervisor of 4 different sites in Turkey. This one at Adana, Diyarbakir, Malatya, and of course, the one back in Izmir, which you've already seen. So I can see why they were eager to and happy to give me a promotion. We had a lot of fun. I wish I could share all of them with you, but I can't, unfortunately. After having done all this, we turned the sites over to the Air Force, and wouldn't you know, Malatya started having trouble. The Air Force colonel asked me to go back out and fix whatever. I got out there, and again, no experience. They couldn't get the 1 kW amplifiers up more than a couple of hundred watts. And I opened up, and the cavities are all wet and sloppy with ethylene glycol and water. So we cleaned them all up, put it back in, and I got it tuned up to at least 200 or 300 watts beyond the required, and backed it down to 1100 or so watts. And so the colonel was happy with that, and I wrote a report to him, and he said, we'd like to offer you a job as a GS-11 to manage all the Tropo operations in Turkey. I said, well, thank you, but I got a Greek wife, and that's not going to do very well in Turkey, and even though she spoke Turkish. So we decided to turn that one down, and it's about that time I ended my Tropo experience in Europe, or in Turkey. Slide. So they sent me over to northern Greece for a while at Mount Hordiatis, northern Greece site. Slide. Here I am at the bay. We had 4 microwave sites, no Tropo. We sent a microwave site down to 3 local sites, which are co-owned with Greek Air Force, American Army, 1 or 2 American Air Force for communication, but they were actually tactical nuclear weapon sites. And we were providing communication to them. And this is what our control panel looked like. A lot of equipment looks pretty old now, but at the time it was state of the art. Slide. Well, just to prove that I could, I did climb a tower again, even though I almost fell off of the one before. Here we are inspecting 2 of the antennas. Tony's behind one, and I'm trying to give him moral support. Slide. Here I am spreading around that one, checking cables and such. You aren't going to catch me on top of towers any longer, not at 85 years. This was my very last site in Europe. And again, they offered me a job down in southern Greece, but by this time I had 2 small children and decided to come back to the US. Now, this had been supposedly a 6-month stint, turned out to be 5.5 years that I stayed over there. So when I came over single with 1 little B4 bag, I went home with a wife and 2 kids. Slide. Back to the US and back to Vandenberg Air Force Base and Apollo operations. Slide. This is Space Launch Complex, SLC-4, which I helped do the radio survey for many years before. You can see a missile just about ready to take off. Slide. And that's the same place. Again, I had done a RF radio survey maybe 8 or 9 years before that. When I worked for Lockheed, we had done a survey. Slide. Well, as it turned out, I got there just in time in 1967, and I became the supervisor of what's called control operations, there's ops control operations, and we controlled the direction of the telemetry, the radar, the optics, and all those things for the Air Force. And that's me in the suit, and Doug Klein behind me, and Ken Dial over there next to the board. We got the C-band signals up and the air-ground signals. And I'm actually talking to the astronauts. Slide. And I worked on Apollo 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So I got some really good experience. This was an Apollo 11 commemorative package they gave me. Slide. The coin on the left, you can see is Borman, Lovell, and Anders. And that was December of 68, which would have been, I guess, Apollo 8 that went to the moon, whipped around and came back. And later on, the one coin on the right side was Apollo 11. And I had the great opportunity to work with those guys. These coins are actually made from the metal from some of the ship that came back from the moon and presented to us as commemorative coins. And little known fact is that while the astronauts were going to the moon, we wanted to check out and see how far our commercial radio stations would go. And they requested Johnny Cash and shit-kicking music. And so we played country western all the way to the moon. Slide. Then my first retirement after 26 years with IT&T, and then I came to Santa Barbara, worked 12 years with Hughes Santa Barbara Research, and a second retirement 22 years ago. Slide. Thanks for watching. Brian, it's all yours.
Okay, that was great. Let's see, anybody have any questions? Oh, I see we got Doc has a patch.
Oh yeah, hi Doc.
12.
Yep.
Apollo 12.
I've got a question.
You remember about 13?
I talked to the launch site on the ham radio, and I got a QSL card in this patch because I made contact with him on launch day.
Well, if you're going to be down at the club tomorrow, I'll bring you a couple of these patches and certificates I got for working all the way through, including 13 when they blew out the side of the ship on the way back.
Oh, okay.
Exciting days.
I'll be there.
Good.
Hey, Ron.
Yeah, Jim.
What years were you there, Ron?
In Europe?
In Alaska.
In Alaska.
60 through 61, mid 61, thereabout.
Did you know, this is AE60F, Meg, smart. Did you know a Wayne Bonney?
Name is vaguely familiar, but I can't place him. Do you know where he's at?
Well, he was my father. I don't know where he was.
But he worked on the dew line. We know that.
Yeah.
Well, I did not work on the dew line. I worked on White Alice. We were the communication. Dew line did all the radar work tracking Russia, and they sent their signals back by way of White Alice and sent them on down. So probably did not meet him if he was on dew line.
Okay.
He was up there 6 or 7 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to meet you. Wayne, when were you in Alaska?
I was there from the late 70s to mid 80s doing stuff on the North Slope and in Nome.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're a latecomer. Like I was out of there by 61 or so.
Yeah, these things were relics by then. I think they were out of service. I think.
Well,
the antennas I saw.
For those who may be interested in really learning more about White Alice, first I've got my book, which goes into detail, a lot of personal stuff and a lot of these personal stories. But if you will Google just White Alice system, there's a couple of really wonderful articles that talks all about the propagation of the signal, how it works, how they use quad diversity and the various receivers. So for those who might be interested, I'd highly recommend it. Just Google White Alice system. Any other questions?
I guess one question is, it didn't look like any of those White Alice stations were close to the dew line stations. They were further north, right?
Well, our farthest one north was Cape Lisburn. So it's fairly far north. Yes, it was. But we had some smaller microwave sites that we didn't show. In fact, the White Alice system had a total of 80 stations. Most of them were really microwaving, but what you get to seeing the 60-foot parabolic. So there had to be a connection.
Okay.
Ron, what was the reason for connecting all these sites together? What were they doing at these locations that they needed the communications between them?
Well, first, the DEW line, with their radars, was looking for early detection of any kind of missiles coming out of Russia. All of their radar data was then piped through our White Alice system, and we piped it all the way down to Colorado Springs, where they had the main control and tracking of all the radar signals. So what we were doing was passing along the radar data. Some of the sites over outside of Nome were also connected to AC&W sites. And so they were also tracking any aircraft and piping their data through us. We could handle 600 channels of 4KC wide audio. So it was all communications back to Colorado Springs. I mean, you got to remember, like I said, this is 60 years ago. And that was state of the art at the time. But today, as Wayne said, all these sites are gone. The few that are left were given over to Alascom for local communications. Today, everything is done by satellite.
What was in Colorado Springs? Is that where Cheyenne Mountain is, or is that something else?
It's called Cheyenne Mountain. And if you've seen, there's been a few movies about it, but that's where all the main control is at, and in the movies you may have seen them, but that's where they track all of the ongoing signals, and not only from there, but also when I was in Europe. That was bad. I didn't mention it, but I was there when Kennedy was killed, and we were piping information from there up to Germany to a place called Kinsbach. It was a cave underground, former German communication point. And from there, they were sending the signals back to Colorado Springs again. So that was the major control point for all communications and intelligence.
So I got to ask you, now you got me curious. My dad worked in Cheyenne Mountain probably when I was maybe 3 years old. So it was probably about 1969. He designed the communication systems within Cheyenne to receive from somewhere. And I never heard where he was receiving from, but would that have been the right era, or was that a little too late?
What year again?
69, 89, somewhere around there.
Yeah, definitely. The tropo systems and the ionospheric scatter systems were really starting in the later 50s, 58, 59. And we built the microwave and the tropo scatter systems after that. So yeah, it would have been the right time. And they were getting signals from the DEW line, but not so much from Europe then.
So his name was Bruce, and apparently the name of the communication system was called Bruce's Box. Have you ever heard of that?
No, afraid not.
Okay.
No.
I'll have to ask him.
Hey, Ron, this is Michael, K6RQB. A couple statement and a couple questions. There's a few limited quasi documentaries on YouTube on White Alice. Just for
Michael, you're really garbled. I can't hear you.
How's this?
Go ahead.
A little bit?
Yeah.
A little better?
A little better.
Okay, let me lean in here. There's some quasi documentaries on YouTube on White Alice. After I read your book, I went and did some looking around. But I had a question. When you're tuning up the Klystrons, were you tuning them up at reduced drive levels?
When I tuned them up, what?
Were you tuning them at reduced drive levels?
We would tune them up starting with a 10-watt input and slowly bring them up. Of course, again, 60 years ago, it's hard to remember. The thing that I remember most is that you don't dare tune up the penultimate too high because you'll blow the whole klystron to pieces. We start off with the lowest coil, which was the bottom first stage, and slowly move it up. Then we would peak up the output and then come back to the penultimate and bring it up to to whatever power we needed. In most cases, it was 10 kW.
Okay, that's how we tune the radar class frames. So also on the what
Just smaller, similar, yeah.
in Western Electric, did they have a tropo shot on the islands of Menorca and Mallorca off of Spain?
Absolutely, we did.
Okay, yeah, one of my
We put those in.
it's a person I used to know worked those tropo stations and had good stories about it.
Well, I didn't talk much about it, but when I went to Europe for 5.5 years, it was 6 months of 6 months assignment, and 5.5 years later, we put in tropo from Germany all the way to Eastern Turkey. And we went out to Majorca, and over all those, and we put in mostly 1 kW. I didn't mention it, but the systems we put in, us technicians, there was a flock of us, went to the factory in New York, and we helped put all that equipment into vans. This was during the Cold War. And the Air Force would then fly those vans to all those locations throughout Europe. And we would then, technicians, go out and install the vans and tune them up and operate them. And that's what I did for 5.5 years, building tropo systems and microwave.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering, could I ask a question?
Please, Larry.
Yeah, Ron, great talk. Very, very interesting. I was wondering, during this period of time, for instance, that you were in Turkey, what was the Soviet Union doing? What kinds of systems were they using? Did they have anything similar to our tropospheric scatter systems?
Well, to tell you the truth, Larry, I don't know what Russia had, but I do know that one of the classified sites that I supported was way out next to the Russian border. And we supplied microwave systems and a small tropo, but we technicians were not allowed even to go in to the radar room of our own country. We said, sorry, you may have secret clearance, but you don't have TS or special. So, but I do know this, we'd be standing outside and all of a sudden the big tipsy radar antenna would suddenly take off and go skewing across the sky, and you could look way up. There'd be something up there coming out from the Soviet Union they were tracking. But I was happy to get out of that site. It was way out in eastern Turkey, and it was no fun. It was in the Kurdistan, and always say the natives were restless, and there were some weird things going on. If you're down the station tomorrow, I'll tell you about it.
Okay, great talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone
Any
else?
more questions?
I hope I haven't bored too many of you.
No, that was great.
Well done.
Well,
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Brian, you're one of the few that have one of my books. For those who tuned in late, that's what it looks like. Actually, this is a second version. My first version was in a regular small format, which Dave has a copy of. And see who else read it. Michael read one of the books. So if anybody's interested in reading these things, I'll bring them down to the station. And
I'll bring that one down with me tomorrow.
appreciate it very much. Yeah, because I only have two now. And if people are interested, I had thought about going on Amazon and having them actually publish it, but of course you don't make any money that way, you lose money. But it is the book itself has some really interesting stories if you've read the book, Brian. And I mean, there's a lot of personal stuff in there as well, and harrowing tales. But anyway, I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you fellas.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was great.
I tried to record it, Ron, but it just didn't work.
Oh, Jim, you need a roll of 120 or 620 film? I've got a.
I think this was 620, Ron. You know, this was even before you were up there, sir.
Well, let me tell you, one of the things I bought when I was in Alaska with all that high pay was I bought one of the first Asahi Pentax 35 millimeter single lens reflex. It was the first one ever presented. Ever. And I had one of those and a 500 millimeter telephoto lens. And so that's what I did all the time. I was off duty taking photographs.
Was that
That's where most of these photographs came from.
Was that a K1000, Ron, or was it before that?
Or
before that.
Oh,
yeah. I had one of those, Ron. Yeah, 50s, mid 50s.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Levi.
Where are you, Levi?
I am in Palm Springs.
Okay.
You're late.
It looks like an airport or something, or a motel.
It actually looks like my grandparents' old basement kind of sitting area.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's it. La Quinta Inn.
Levi did not miss the presentation because he's one of the few that actually read my book.
No, I've been here since I joined just as you started, Ron.
Oh, good. Did I make any mistakes this time, Levi?
No, it was cool to see all the pictures together. I think there was even more than were in the book.
Well, yeah, I did add a few. I mean, I still have another 30 or 40 pictures I haven't even, put together. I didn't think anybody was interested, but yeah, I had a lot of them.
Yeah, I saw the director's cut.
Well, I got to tell you guys, I've been retired for 22 years, bored to tears. And since I joined Santa Barbara Amateur Radio Club a year and a half ago, I couldn't be happier and meeting all you fellows and getting back into electronics. As many of you know, I just decided a year and a half ago when I first met Brian a couple of years ago, I think I'll take a technician license just for the hell of it. And next thing you know, I felt that was easy enough. Let's take a general. Last week and a half ago, I decided to sit down and dabble a little with an extra, and what do you know? I got all of them right.
All right.
You should be doing the CW contest this weekend, Ron.
No, Dave and I are going to get together for lunch next week and talk about that, because right now, all I have, you guys are going to laugh like hell, but that's it. Tri-Bander VTech works great. That's how I talk to you guys on the net or in the morning. And I'm looking to buy something, but I don't know what.
Why don't you get a Klystron for your closet?
That'd be okay, Brian, but what about the antenna? Living in a mobile home park, you're slightly limited. I couldn't put a 60-footer up.
All the lights will dim, every time.
You could move closer to the drive-in and use one of those like a White Alice or something.
Yeah.
Hey, Ron, did you blow up any Klystrons?
No.
No?
No, I listened to the instructors really well. We had 3 months of school on the White Alice, mostly on the tropo stuff, and then all the inside plants. So I had a lot to learn. Hey, Levi, what you got there?
Jewel.
A little Klystron.
Cool.
This is baby Jewel.
Ron, I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
With all of that, when did you get time to get a PhD?
Well, some people call me an overachiever. I just say I'm restless. But in addition to doing all this radio work, I worked full time and I went to school at night and correspondence, and I just kept going. When I left Chicago at 17 and I quit high school at 17 and joined the Air Force because one of my best buddies from ROTC had just joined the Marines. He went to Korea and got killed in 3 months. And I felt so bad that I quit high school and joined the Air Force. But luckily, I went into electronics and went to Germany. So my life and the story that you guys saw tonight starts the day I got out of the Air Force at 21 years old. And in between, but I have always gone to school, and in between that, actually, I taught for 22 years for Golden Gate University in their MBA program, and I taught for UCSB in their International Studies program, no American students. So I have always taught or gone to school, and once in a while I got home. Thanks for asking, Brian.
If you want to do the CW, I happen to have an XP.
Well, who knows? I might, when I took this extra last week, the guy said, what are you going to do next? I said, I don't know. I'm bored to tears. They said, well, you can go ahead and get into CW, or if you want to become a VE, you can do that too. So I said, well, I'll think about it.
Yeah, you might get bored to tears being a VE because that only happens 3 hours every 2 months and they rotate. So it might be 3 hours a year.
That isn't going to do it.
Well, and lately it'd be 3 hours every 3 years.
Yeah.
Ron, I took the extra class exam back in 2000. After I retired, I studied for, as you did, I crammed for it and then took it. And I took it the week before they removed the CW requirement.
Sorry about that, Doc.
How fast is your CW now, Doc? Are you up to snuff on it, or?
I do about 15 words a minute solid, but the rest of it I can copy if I hear it repeated 3 or 4 times. I can, copy enough for contesting, but for sending traffic, I would probably really stink. So
We should do the contest this weekend. I think you'd have fun.
Well, I've got the rig here. I can do it. I've got an antenna. That's my station over there.
There you go.
And there's the keyer sticking around the corner there.
Perfect.
Klystron here.
Yeah, Klystron underneath and
Right. It's a 10,000 kW station.
there you go. That ought to be enough to irradiate your neighbors in their aluminum homes.
Doc, be careful. I'm close enough to that I don't want to get radiated.
How many fried birds on the wire? Yeah.
Right. Meanwhile, while you were having those pictures up, I was looking at the wires in the background, counting the birds.
Well, you said you had 4 of them up on the board this morning.
Well, I couldn't be sure they weren't insulators, but anyway.
Oh, Ron, this has got to be a big letdown for you in the morning. It's after what you've done, and then you hear some old guy counting the birds on his wire. All right, everybody. That's about it, I guess, for us, unless we got any more business.
Bye,
Can
folks.
I ask a quick question to Ron?
Yeah, Rick.
Yeah. What years did you work at SBRC?
From 87 to 99.
I was there with you then.
Well, your name, yeah, I recognize the name Whitaker right away. When I went to SBRC, though, I didn't do electronics. I was manager of all of the financial operations for the company. I'm the one who wrote your paycheck and all that. And then for the last 4 years, when Raytheon bought us, I was director of information technology.
Well, I want to thank you for every set.
I thought you looked familiar, Rick.
All right, well, tomorrow the club station's open, and I already know what the main topic of conversation is going to be about. So get there early, Ron, and get your feet up. You're going to be answering more questions, I think.
Bring an extra book.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid I'd bore the tears out of everybody, but it looks like we had a good turnout. So thank you.
Yeah, no, very interesting.
Thank you.
All right, well, thanks everybody for coming.
Thanks to Dorothy for reminding me.
Thank you, Dorothy.
All right, we'll do it all again next month.
All righty, bye.
Thanks,
Okay,
Ron.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
See you guys later, guys. Thanks, Ron.
See you, Dave.
Bye.
Thanks.